Hi, I'm Joe Lathrop, and I'm here with this little video package to just sort of preview for you a little bit of what I'm planning to do in a circuit around the country speaking. I'm going to speak at sportsmen's banquets, wild game dinners, all kinds of events where there'll be hunters and fishermen, fathers and sons, and even other, general crowd too. My idea of speaking is just to give good stories. People love stories. And the ones I'm going to tell are stories that they can identify with. When I get up in front of a group of people, I love to see the heads going up and down like this, and then people clapping when they hear something that's familiar. And when I say something funny, some funny line, I love to hear the crowd laugh. And this is all for a purpose. We want to communicate a good message to people. And this old man right here is called the storyteller. So listen up and watch the rest of this little video and see what you think. I was about 14, I think. It was around 1953, I guess. And for the first time in my young life, my dad said, "Joey, you're going to go deer hunting this year." Oh my goodness, I was so thrilled. So he and his brother-in-laws and relatives, my uncles, had a little cabin up on Grand Lake between Rogers City and Alpena. And so I got to go up there on Thanksgiving weekend. And I got to the cabin. It was typical. It was like a Christmas card cabin. It was old log cabin with an old kitchen and a long table, overstuffed couches, a nice fireplace, and bunks around. Lots of long underwear hanging from the cedar beams and so on. You've been there. You've seen that. But I sat there in that overstuffed chair as a 14-year-old boy, and I thought, man, this is just about as good as it gets. And I looked over beside me, and here was a nice dish of chocolate-covered peanuts. And I said, man, it's like little clusters of peanuts. And I looked at those, and I looked around and reached in and got, man, they were good. And I sat there as a wet-eared kid, and I sat there and devoured that whole stupid cup of chocolate-covered peanuts. Well, my Uncle Floyd, who was a restaurateur in Lexington, Michigan, he said, "That's okay, Joey. That's okay. I make those myself. We make them right here in the kitchen." He said, "I'll have plenty more for you tomorrow." "That's fine. It's no problem." So the next day came, we hunted, and we came back into the cabin at night all tired out and had a big meal. And I plopped down in the easy chair there again, and there was a nice dish that Uncle Floyd had made, a nice dish of chocolate-covered peanuts. So I just reached in. Why not? No problem. I reached in, I grabbed a whole one. I put it in my mouth and I started to chew, and it suddenly got very quiet in the cabin. And all of a sudden I looked around, my uncles were looking at me, and I thought, what in the world? And I started to chew the chocolate-covered peanuts, and folks, it didn't taste right. Something was wrong. It was gritty, and it was bitter, and there was stuff in my mouth that shouldn't have been in my mouth. And my uncles were all laughing, and they were bent over, and their tears coming down, and they're just howling and laughing. And I'm sitting over there, and I put my finger up to my mouth, and I brought it up, and it was green. It wasn't chocolate. Uncle Floyd just started howling. He had gone out that day and brought in some fresh deer turds, and chocolate covered them, and I ate them. Interesting thing happened on the way. We were in Wisconsin, going across northern Wisconsin, and a great big whitetail, albino whitetail 8-point came right out on the road. I've never seen one before. I don't know if everybody's seen an albino deer, but it was perfectly white but it had a big rack on it. And it stood there in front of our truck, and then finally went across the road, and that was sort of the beginning of an interesting week for us. But we stayed in a beautiful home. We had guides, and this was all set up for us. And he said, in the darkness, he said, right over in that field, there's a big spruce tree right in the middle of it. And he said, your tree stands up in that tree. So I said, how high is it? And he said, it's up there a ways. Don't worry about it. I started to climb up on the branches. There was no ladder, it was just the branches. And I kept going, and finally I thought, you know what? I must have missed that tree stand, because I'm a long ways up here. So I took my flashlight. Oh my goodness, there's my tree stand up there. So I climbed all up. By this time I'm a nervous wreck, and I get up in this, I finally swing around and get in the tree stand. And I'm so nervous I can't even get the thermos out of my backpack, and I finally bring my gun up, and I'm sitting up there. I was 38 feet off the ground. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I heard right below me. Some of you hunters, you know what I'm talking about. How in the world that buck got in there, I'll never know. Came right in behind me, And I'm sitting up there. I got a 300 Win Mag sitting there on a little shelf in front of me. I can't do a thing. Finally, the deer whistled and snorted and took off. So I grabbed my gun and I whirled around like this, and I put it right on that tail, and that tail was about that wide, about that high. Huge buck. But I didn't dare shoot because I didn't have a really good shot at him. He was running away from me, and I thought if he would just stop. And boom, he put his brakes on, he turned sideways, broadside behind some bushes, and it was just a split second, and I had a chance to put the crosshairs on him. 300 mag. Now, that baby really knocks you back. I didn't see anything happen. I didn't see the deer jump or run. I thought, I'll bet you I'd drop that deer right down this. So then I got down, and I was able to go over where I thought the deer had stood. Well, there was no blood, there was no evidence of a deer. So I was pretty discouraged, but at the end of it, I thought, I've had such a great experience up here. It's been such a great hunt to hunt in this country, and to see this deer and get a shot at it. So we went back, came back to Gladwin. So he said, I thought I better go over there. So he went, good outfitter. Went all the way back to my stand, and he walked over there, and here was this 158-point, 10-point buck laying there, just the head. The wolves had eaten every ounce of meat. It was just bones scattered for 50 yards. And this great big beautiful rack laying there with a head. And it was mine. I had it mounted, and it's actually in my son's basement. If you're a hunter at all, and you gals that maybe or maybe not hunters, but there's a moment in a hunter's life, if you're an archery hunter, that is as exciting as it can possibly be. And that's when you're sitting up in that tree stand and you've done everything you can, and a deer comes in, and you've made your mind up that that's one I'm going to take, whether it be a buck or a doe. You've already made that decision. And it comes close, and your heart starts to beat, and you slowly get your bow ready, and you just are so careful because you've prepared and you've waited for this moment. And it comes finally, and you get that bow, and that deer comes in, and it makes a presentation to you, and you make up your mind, I can kill that deer, I can shoot it. And it's that moment, folks, between now and now. And then you let go, and it goes right in the boiler room. There's nothing more exciting than that second between the time you pull that bow back and you release it. I'll tell you, that puts adrenaline in you. Most of us leave the woods with more memory than meat. It's not a failure, though, because you've been the beneficiary of God's artistic creation. You've had a few hours of peace and quiet, and there's always tomorrow or next week or even next year. Harvesting an animal becomes the bonus for most of us. It's not the killing that we're passionate about, it's the hunting. And if we're careful, we may be able to preserve that experience for those yet to come. We live in a wonderful country, and we must be caretakers of the land and the privilege that God has given us. And I'd like to leave you with just these thoughts. Teach the young. You're working with the young, you're helping the young, but it's our responsibility. My grandson harvested a buck last night. I couldn't be a prouder grandpa. I called Marv Gertz up and said, thank you for letting David hunt on your land. He harvested a buck, he needs the meat. What a privilege. Teach the young. Practice true ethical sportsmanship. We need to be examples to those coming up of what it's like to be an ethical sportsman, to wait to the proper moment, to be careful, not to abuse our privilege. And remember who gave it all to us. Well, I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen on the video. Gives you a little glimpse of who I am, what I have to say, and we thank you for taking the time to look at this. So I'm going to say goodbye now, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. See you at your banquet.
Thank you for watching this video on Joe Lathrop. We hope that you've enjoyed what you've seen, and it gives you a glimpse of who Joe Lathrop is and his passion for the outdoors. For more information about Joe Lathrop, go to his website, www.joelathrop.com.